We know that the summer heat is tough on people, but do you ever wonder how pets deal with the rising temperatures? On today's show, we will take a closer look at taking care of our pets, and we will share tips on how to keep your pets safe and healthy under the sweltering sun. And as always, we are here to answer your questions. All that and more coming up on this episode of Ask the Doc, No Appointment Needed.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Doc, No Appointment Needed, the health show where the questions you send in are answered by our doctors and medical experts. I'm Dr. Joy Carter, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, and thank you so much for joining us today. Let's get right to your questions. Our first question comes from Stella, who emailed us, and she asks, I have a dog with long hair that loves to be active and run around outside, but I'm worried about him getting overheated under the sweltering sun. Am I right to be concerned? And what are some signs that he is getting too hot? All right, Stella, thanks so much for writing in. And you are definitely right to be concerned, okay? Here are some signs of overheating in dogs. So certainly things you might see could be kind of a bright red tongue, excessive panting. They can certainly start to drool, hypersalivate, kind of foam at the mouth. Definitely more serious signs if they start to be lethargic, kind of unsteady, stumbling around. Vomiting, diarrhea is one. And definitely if they're weak, disoriented, and they feel hot to the touch, okay? And some of these symptoms, they don't happen right away, okay? They can have these symptoms that can develop anywhere from 30 minutes to a couple of hours if they get overheated when they're inside the house. So you need to watch them very closely. And at the first sign of any of these symptoms, you need to rush them and bring them into your vet because definitely heat exhaustion, heat stroke certainly can be deadly. And unfortunately, I have seen quite a few cases that unfortunately had, very bad outcomes. Definitely, there are some things to do at home if you suspect that your pet maybe has had a heat stroke or is getting overheated. Okay. One thing obviously is you want to cool them down with cold water and things like that. But the big thing is we need to talk about how to prevent this. All right. So definitely, you've got a long haired dog. I really recommend in the summer months or anytime when it is hot in Florida, which is I'd say probably 75% of the time here, that you get their coat cut. Okay. Even your long haired dogs, they can have their coat cut. You can find a good groomer and they can do, something that looks really nice. But definitely the less fur is going to, help them. Certainly walking them at times of the day when it is not that hot outside. So it's going to be early in the morning and kind of late in the evening. All right. Now, if you do need to take your pet out during the middle of the day, that is okay. But you want it just to be a really quick, short potty break. Okay. Imagine if you had to walk around in this sweltering sun with a fur coat on. And if you don't think you'd be able to do it, okay, then your pet is not going to be able to do it. Because remember, pets or dogs particularly, they do not sweat, okay? The way they release heat is through panting, okay? So they sometimes have a little bit more difficult time with cooling themselves down, obviously, than us as humans are able to. All right. Other things that you can certainly see about doing is if you are going out for walks, make sure you've got fresh water. Definitely you can buy these new kind of portable like water bottles with a little bowl for your dog. Put some ice cubes in it. But like I said, the best thing you do is just going to be to prevent it. And so definitely like, June, July, August, just walk your dog in the morning and walk them late in the evening when it's not too hot because you do not want to take the risk, okay? I've seen so many times pets pass away from this or have to have very intensive and expensive treatment. When I say expensive, like anywhere thousands of dollars. Sometimes they need to get, plasma transfusions. They can go into organ failure. It's basically can be really, really bad. All right. So Stella, all right, good luck with your long-haired doggy. Definitely get him a good grooming and get his fur cut. And then just make sure not to walk him during the middle of the day when it's so hot. All right. All right. The next question comes from Justin, who emailed us with his question, and he writes, my dog Sorry, my cat and my dog both love sitting outside. We have a pool and the dog loves to swim when we are out there. The cat spends all day sunning himself. Do we have to worry the dog will go in the pool when we aren't outside? And are cats and dogs natural swimmers? So technically, they do know how to swim. Now, how good at swimming, that can vary on a lot of different factors. In particular, okay, your older dogs, your dogs that, say might have some type of disability like the arthritis, or, dogs that might even be missing a limb that, had a limb amputated. Even puppies, I would say you have to be careful, honestly, with any dog, but especially even brachiocephalic breeds, like those guys, they can't swim very well, okay, or hardly at all. All right. So if you have one of those breeds and you have a pool, you need to be very, very careful. If you're going to let your dog run around outside and you don't have a gate or a fence or something like that that the pool is enclosed in, then I would buy them a life jacket. Okay, they have doggy life jackets, and let them wear that, because if they jump into the pool, then they're okay. Other things and steps you can do are certainly, depending on how your pool is designed, but making it to where there's easy access. So if they do get in the pool, that they're able to get out. Okay. And I will say this, it's not just pools, but it is hot tubs, it is jacuzzis. I had a puppy come in, unfortunately, that fell in the hot tub and drowned, and it was so, so sad. As far as cats go, most cats are not just going to jump in the water, but there are some of those weird cats out there that might want to get in the water. But I highly doubt if your cat is just being lazy and getting a little bit of a suntan, is going to want to jump in. But certainly a dog could come up and scare your cat, or some other animal, something like that. So you definitely have to watch out, because we don't see drowning in cats really that often, because I think they're maybe a little bit smarter as far as it comes to water safety. They're just not going to go near the water, but it still is a risk. Okay. Just like with children, all right, you don't need to leave your pets outside by a pool unsupervised. I can't say that too much, because all it takes for you to turn your head for 30 seconds, for a couple of minutes, and next thing you know, your pet can certainly drown. Okay. And that is no way that we want a pet to, pass away. It's definitely 100% preventable. Okay. All right. Good luck, Justin. So go out there, get you a little doggy life jacket. They might even have a life jacket for your cat. I don't know if your cat would like it or not, but you could possibly see. All right, the next question comes in from Jennifer, and she asks, I love going to the beach and taking my dog, but I've heard bad things happen if they ingest too much ocean water or eat the sand. Is that true? Yes, Jennifer, it can be true. So there is something called like salt intoxication or salt toxicosis. Typically, we tend to see it here in South Florida because dogs have gone to the beach and they've ingested too much ocean water, because, it is basically salt water. Um, Definitely, it can be life-threatening if they ingest enough of it, okay? It raises the sodium levels in their bloodstream, and it can certainly affect their brain, okay? They can start to basically have seizures, kind of go into a coma, like all kind of neurological signs, things like that. It can be treated, but I will say this, treatment is going to be very aggressive, and it's going to need to be done at a specialty or emergency hospital, and it could be very expensive. Okay. Now, as far as sand ingestion, knock on wood, I have yet to do a foreign body surgery for a sand impaction. Now, I've definitely seen dogs ingest enough sand to the point to where it has caused gastrointestinal issues. Some so bad to the point that we have had to hospitalize them and put them on IV fluids, and then put them on medications to kind of help with motility to get the kind of sand moving out. Why it usually doesn't tend to be life-threatening, though, I've certainly seen dogs that have had to spend 1 or 2 days in the hospital, and that can get expensive. So whenever you are at the beach with your pet, you just want to make sure that they've got access to fresh water too, not just, salt water, all right, the ocean water, and just monitor them. If they seem like they are playing too much in the water and drinking a lot of water, or playing too much in the sand and maybe ingesting the sand, then you may want to say, hey, it's time to go home, or put them on a leash in a safe area where they can't, get to the water or get to the sand. All right, Jennifer, well, good luck, and hopefully you can have fun, taking your dog to the beach. All right, we still have time to answer your questions, and it's so easy to send them in. This is how you do it.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.
Our next question comes from Manuel, who reached out to us on Facebook, and he writes, our girls love going for long walks. What can I do to protect them from the heat coming up off the hot pavement? All right, Manuel. So, one thing you first want to do is determine if the pavement is too hot to take them out for a walk. So, the way you do that is you want to take your hand and you want to put it on the pavement and hold it for 5 seconds. If it is too hot for your hand, it is too hot for your dog's paws, their feet. Okay. I definitely recommend, like I said, if you're going to go for longer walks, you want to do it early in the morning, late in the evening. Now, for some reason, you do have to take them outside kind of during midday and there is some hot pavement. There are special like booties, kind of like shoes for dogs that you can get from your local pet store, or you can certainly purchase them online that you can use for that. Remember that a lot of times it may not seem like that hot outside, but the asphalt or the pavement sometimes can be anywhere from 20 to 30 to even 40 degrees hotter than what the ambient temperature is outside. So if there's any question about it possibly being too hot, like I said, put your hand on the asphalt, all right, and you see if it's too hot for your hand, it's too hot for your puppies. So don't take them outside, okay? All right. So Madison followed up with her email and she writes, as temperatures continue to rise, can you share some tips on what to do to keep my little buddy safe? All right, Madison. So we kind of talked a little bit about this. I'll kind of reiterate some points a little bit more. But obviously, there's definitely some summer, safety tips as far as with the heat and humidity, okay? One big thing is going to be hydration. All right. You definitely want to have access to water for them. All right. It needs to be cool water. Ice cubes are great too. You want to limit outdoor activities when it is like during the middle of the day, the hottest time. You definitely want to provide some shade and some ventilation for these guys. And one big thing is obviously never ever leave your pet in the car. Okay. And then you also want to be very vigilant and look for signs of heat exhaustion, which I talked about with the other question. Now, when it comes to leaving pets in vehicles, I know we've all been guilty of this, all right? I will say this, that I have heard stories, of people leaving their pets in the car with the AC on, and the dogs have been able to turn off the AC and have passed away because they basically had heat stroke and died. A lot of the Teslas out there, which I actually have a Tesla, and this is the number one feature that I use, do have the dog mode. I definitely, for short time periods, the dog mode is okay, but you don't want to leave them, for any longer than a few minutes, okay? It's just like with a baby. You wouldn't, trust your baby in the car without you in there. So do the same thing, as far as with your pet. Any other tips or things like that I have? I mean, if you have a long-haired dog, like I mentioned, getting their fur cut, I mean, the big thing is just going to be avoid taking them out when it is so, so hot, honestly, okay? You don't want to be outside. I don't want to be outside. Trust me, your dog doesn't want to be outside when it's like 90 degrees out there, okay? All right. All right. Marshall emailed in with a question many of us can relate to, and he writes, I know the sun can cause skin cancer in humans, but what about my pet? Is there such a thing as sunscreen for dogs and cats? All right, Marshall. Yes. So there is sunscreen for pets. I'm not familiar with like any particular brand name or anything like that, but I know they definitely have those products out there. Certainly, there are some types of skin cancer that kind of have been linked a little bit to sun exposure. Squamous cell carcinoma and melanoma are the two big ones that we tend to see. Definitely, if your dog is very light skinned and doesn't have a whole lot of fur on them, they're predisposed to that. And certainly, your breeds of cats that don't really have any hair or very little hair, the Sphinx, the Devon Rex, things like that, those are going to be ones that are more predisposed to it. All right. Remember, too, your cats that are inside sunbathing, they can get sun exposure that way, too. So if you've got a cat that is not, doesn't have a lot of hair or no hair at all, you certainly want to limit how much time they spend kind of sunbathing in the window. And next, Erin reached out through Instagram and she writes, I want to take a trip home to Georgia this summer. What is the best way to travel with my cat safely? Is it better to drive or to fly? And what can I do to prepare? All right, Erin, that is my home state. Go dogs, woohoo! So it really kind of depends on where you're going in Georgia or where you're traveling in general. It just doesn't have to be Georgia, obviously. So as far as a cat goes, it is pretty easy to fly with your cat. Most cats are small enough that they can fit inside a carrier that can kind of go up underneath the seat in front of you. You certainly have to check with your airlines and make sure that they allow pets on the flight, and as far as what type of paperwork and vaccinations they need to have. But flying with your cat is not a bad thing necessarily. All right. As far as driving with your pet, it can be just as stressful as flying. I honestly recommend, depending on where you're going in Georgia, it may be just better to drive because honestly, by the time you go to the airport, you have to check in for your flight, you have to wait, you fly the airplane, you get off the airplane, you get your luggage, you get your rental car, and then you drive to your destination. It may honestly be the same time frame, okay, for you just to drive. If you want to check and see how your pet is going to do in the car, the best thing to do is to start practicing. So you want to take them for short trips and see how they do. Now, if they are getting very stressed out, all right, there are some things that can be done, all right? There definitely are some medications, and you just need to make an appointment with your regular veterinarian. There are medications that basically can help reduce the anxiety and kind of sedate them a little bit, whether they're flying or whether they're riding in the car. All right. One thing I do want to say, and I know, Erin, that you say you have a cat, but I see this a lot with dogs. A lot of people want to fly with their dogs, and that's great. But a lot of people are labeling their dogs as service animals or emotional support animals, things like that, to try and get them on the flight for either cheap or to not have to put them basically, if it's a larger dog, kind of in the cargo underneath the plane. And that definitely is a big problem, okay? We definitely, it's not something that I recommend that you trying to do. If your pet is not a service animal or not an emotional support animal, okay, and you have to fly with your pet, it is okay if they go underneath the plane, all right? They can be just as safe there as they can be on the plane with you. And the reason why is because it messes it up for everyone else who does have an actual service animal that needs to be with that person. Okay. So sorry, that's a little bit kind of on my soapbox, but just remember, if you don't have an emotional support or a service animal, don't label them as that, okay? There are definitely other ways that you could travel. You could even hire private planes if you have a lot of money to be able to take you and your pet to your destination. So good luck, Erin. I hope you have a great time in Georgia, and let us know how it goes. All right, we still have time to answer your question, and it's so easy to send them in. This is all you do.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.
Back to our questions. We just got a question from Joanne, this time from our Facebook page, and she writes, some days after playing outside, my dog eats like he hasn't eaten all day, but other days he won't touch his food. Does the heat impact a dog's desire to eat? And should I feed him immediately or should I wait? Also, should I avoid certain foods? All right, Joanne. So definitely it's possible that heat could affect your dog's appetite. I know for me, a lot of times if I've been very active, last thing I want to do is eat a big meal right away. So I definitely recommend you can certainly give them a small snack, make sure they've got fresh water, things like that. But if they've been very active outside, you may want to wait a couple of hours because the last thing you want to do is feed your dog and next thing you know, he upchucks it, okay? If that was to happen, I wouldn't freak out too much. Just monitor him, okay? If he has any more vomiting or any other symptoms that are concerning, then certainly take him, to the vet type of thing. But it's not necessarily something to be that super concerned about. But the best thing to do is to just not feed them right away after they've been, very, very active. As far as certain foods to avoid? I mean, really not necessarily. I just wouldn't feed them a large meal. You could, the regular food is perfectly fine. Hopefully, you're not giving them human food, type of thing. But there's not really any food I would say that you certainly need to avoid. Okay. All right. So the next question we have this is going to be from Alice, and she writes, summer means it's time to barbecue. Oh, yes, it does. And that means having friends over. My dog has figured out which friends he can get food from, and we are concerned about him eating people food. How dangerous is it, and how can we change that behavior? All right, Alice. So definitely this is a very important question. All right. I do not know how many corn cob foreign bodies I have got out of dogs' intestines. All right. I know a lot of people like corn on the cob, especially during the summer and with the barbecue. All right. When dogs eat this, they just cannot digest it. All right. And typically, I would say majority of the time, it gets stuck in the intestines, causes an obstruction, and they need emergency surgery, which can be very expensive. Okay. So you definitely want to make sure that they're not, you don't want them to get into anything, but that definitely is one of the number one dangerous foods. Now, the best thing is just when you have company over, just tell them politely, hey, my dog is going to beg for food. Don't give my dog food. We are trying to break the mother habit. Most of your friends and family are going to be respectful and they are going to abide by that. Okay. Other things that can pose a problem, certainly depending on what you're grilling as far as meat wise, anything that has bones in it, if you got your rack of ribs, if you got some chicken legs, things like that. Now, usually with bone ingestions is not typically like deadly, but certainly they can pose different problems. They can get stuck in the esophagus, certainly can cause severe irritation to the stomach, to the intestines, bad enough to the point that sometimes they have severe vomiting and diarrhea, possibly with blood. These guys can get very sick from it, and sometimes they need to be hospitalized. The other thing that I do tend to see is sometimes I have seen dogs actually eat what we call like shish kebabs, like the skewers that you put your meat and your veggies on. Dog goes up to get some of the meat and they just ingest the whole entire stick. And those sticks, obviously, they're sharp, they're pointy. Some of them are metal, some of them made out of wood, but they definitely cause a very serious problem. They can get stuck in the esophagus. They can get stuck in the stomach, requiring emergency surgery or requiring a scope. And there's even concern they can perforate or penetrate through the esophagus or even sometimes the stomach, and that can even be more of a worse outcome. Something else that you guys may not think about is when you are grilling, the grease and the fat that you kind of want to, get rid of and dispose of at the end. Definitely make sure you are putting it in the trash can or some type of container to then dispose of later, or dispose of it like in an area of the yard where your pets do not have access to. Reason why I say this is because they will go and they will try and lick it. I had a case last year, very interesting. The owners poured out some grease. They poured the grease into kind of this area of their yard that had like these little rocks and pebbles, thinking, oh, okay, it's safe. My dog's not going to do anything. Guess what? Doggy went over there, started eating the rocks and the pebbles. I think there was probably maybe something like 30 rocks that we counted in this dog's stomach. Now, we were able to induce vomiting and get a lot of them up. Thankfully, the pebbles were small enough that they were able to pass through the gastrointestinal tract, but we had to keep him in the hospital for a couple of days, and we had to put him on IV fluids. We had to put, him on medications to help with motility. We had to take multiple x-rays to make sure that nothing was getting stuck. And needless to say, something as innocent as that turned out to be anywhere from like a $3,000 to $5,000 vet bill. Okay, so it can get very, very expensive. So definitely that's something else that you need to look out for, Alice. Okay, and good luck with grilling. If you need to invite anyone over, I'm always looking for a good barbecue. Okay. All right. PJ emailed us in, and her question is, we want to get a dog for our little girl. Which breeds are the best to have here in South Florida, and which ones do you recommend staying away from? All right, PJ. So the number one breed, I think in the United States now, it used to be, I think, the Labrador Retriever. It is now the wonderful French Bulldog. Okay. And I say that with a little bit of sarcasm. I love the Frenchies. They are super, super cute. But honestly, any of the brachiocephalic breeds, so your French Bulldogs, your basically English bulldogs, your pugs, your Boston Terriers, things like that. They are really not adapted for warm weather, okay? They cannot breathe good as it is, and then putting the heat on top of that is just going to make it worse. So I honestly don't recommend those breeds, which I know a lot of people have them here in South Florida, and that's okay, all right? But to me, it's just not a breed that I really associate with warm weather. Definitely your long hair breeds, okay? Your Huskies, your Alaskan Malamutes, your Chow Chows, things like that. Those guys, they were built for the winter, okay? They're not built for the South Florida sun. I mean, you can certainly have them here, but you just have to be very, very cautious about that, all right? Ultimately, it is your decision, PJ, as far as what breed you decide. This is just my opinion, but definitely you do have to think about, living in a hot climate and what is going to be best for your dogs. So, I really wish you the best of luck, and hopefully you can get the perfect breed for you and your daughter. All right. So, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Once again, I'm Dr. Joy Carter, and I will see you guys next time on Ask the Doc, No Appointment Needed. Bye.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.